Hello! I'm Leah.
I'm Samir.
And I'm Devin.
And we're from Assemble.
Assemble is located 4824 Penn Avenue in the Garfield neighborhood.
And we are a community space for arts and technology.
Yeah, that's right. So today we're gonna build some bridges. Before we jump into that,
I have a little joke for you, if you're willing to lend a ear. So I recently got a pair of these trousers for my friend, and he's from London, so I got these London Bridge trousers, but they keep falling down.
London Bridge is falling down. Yeah.
Falling down. All right, now that we've got all of our puns out of the way, we can start to build.
Cool, so what do we do first?
The first thing, actually, we're going to talk about tension. So Devin, would you grab that side? So before we build, we actually want to talk about the different vocab that comes with bridges. So whenever we have a bridge, you're supposed to have tension. So right now we don't have very good tension. So if somebody tried to walk across the bridge, wouldn't be very safe.
Ooh.
But as we pull tighter and tighter, that tension starts to get stronger, and that person has an easier time.
Oh. Yeah, look at that.
Tightrope person! You made it! Awesome!
Tightrope isn't the best way to get across a river, right?
Mm-mm.
Nope.
That would be pretty challenging. And if you live in Pittsburgh, then you know that we have to get across a couple rivers. I think we have over 200 bridges in Pittsburgh.
Gosh, I'm not surprised.
So with tension, we also have another vocab word that we're going to use. We have our deck, and then we also have our columns. So whenever you put all those things together, then you can have a stable structure that you can stand on, like this. In this engineering challenge, you will need plastic and paper cups, also 2 pieces of cardboard. First, you're going to stack your cups in an order. Then place your cardboard on top. Next, stack your second row of cups on top. The more cups that you use, the more sturdy and stable your structure will be. Finally, put the cardboard piece on top and test it out. The tension from the cups should support my weight. Whee! Sometimes when the tension is already pushed to its limit, it breaks. Wow, look at that.
That was so cool. That's crazy.
All right. So if everybody wants to take 2 markers, I think what we could do is if we each take 2 markers and 2 rubber bands and we can wrap them.
Okay.
And then we can poke them through.
Yeah. Maybe we could also show our materials so everybody has a better idea of what we're going to need today, right?
Yeah. So we have our egg carton. This is going to be our deck or our columns. What else do we have here, Samir?
We got some markers here.
They are the skinny ones.
Yeah, some skinny markers. What do these do, Leah?
So those are also going to play a part of the column, and they're going to help make sure that our structure is stable.
Really cool.
I also should have gotten a heat with a stand.
And last but not least, we have our ruler. This is actually going to be the deck that goes across. So that's where the car, the person, or the animal can go across. And then we talked about tension, and that's where our rubber bands come in too. So we're going to need to pull and make sure that that tension's nice and strong. Okay. last thing, a sharp pencil so that you can poke holes into your egg carton. And that'll be important for actually putting your markers on.
Yeah. So I guess we're gonna go ahead and just put all of our holes into the carton first.
Yeah, and if you guys want to grab markers and start to wrap those. You can place them in. So you can see all the holes in there. Yay! Okay, so then I like to open up the egg carton. We're actually gonna have it upside down, right?
Yeah, that looks great.
So then if we have rubber bands, we have 2 rubber bands, so one's gonna go on the bottom, so towards the bottom of the markers. Yeah. And then we can place. So these go. Why don't we put the markers in first?
Beautiful.
And then put the rubber band. Look at that. Okay. So we got the bottom. And then you put one on the top. If you feel like it's too loose or doesn't have tension, then you can wrap it again. Okay. You can put yours in there. I can help you if you need.
Yeah. Okay.
But I probably could have put like yeah. I just
Kind of easier to have the same size rubber bands, but if you have different ones, you can
but
just wrap
yeah,
them.
it's not the end of the world. You guys.
Nice. Can you feel that tension, Samir?
Yeah, there's a lot of tension in there. It's kind of scary.
Only 2 columns in.
Nice. Poke my markers through the top.
We need more markers.
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of what it's looking like inside right now. Then I'm gonna put my rubber band on the bottoms of my markers, like Leah was telling us.
Awesome. So far, so good.
Yeah.
And if you're a perfectionist like me, save all of your perfectionism for the end.
Yeah.
Because they're gonna flop around and move around, and then you can save all the engineering part. Do you guys have a favorite bridge?
Oh, that's a good question.
I've seen the San Francisco Bridge. That's a really beautiful bridge. But I also really like the Andy Warhol Bridge. That's one of my favorite bridges to walk across.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the yellow bridges that we had. They're really beautiful.
I have a soft spot for some New York City bridges because I lived there for a while. The Brooklyn Bridge is always beautiful
Brooklyn
to walk
Bridge is
across.
beautiful.
That is great. So close.
Yeah, it does. I like it because you can like see sort of the inside mechanics of it too. Like when you open up the egg carton, it's not every day that you get to sort of see the inside workings and things.
Last one. Alright, so now, like I said, if you're a perfectionist, you're like, oh my goodness, that's just not working. You can play around and see what works and what doesn't. Another thing that you can do is if you want to use different size rubber bands, maybe the beginning of your bridge is small and it slowly gets wider and wider and wider. Place your ruler on your bridge to create a deck. The markers or the columns support the deck. The rubber bands or the suspension make sure that the deck stays up straight. You can even play with some of your toys on your bridge, like these animals or even matchbox cars. You can also use other recycled materials from at home. Like we're using our bottle cap for a car. If you want to make another type of suspension bridge, some at-home materials that you can use are toothpicks, string, measuring tape, cardboard, and cardboard tubes. Here are some other bridges you can get inspiration from. Alright guys, we're going to make another type of suspension bridge. This one's a little bit more challenging, a little bit more difficult, but I know you can do it. Alright, for this suspension bridge, we will need 4 cardboard tubes. I like the cardboard tubes to just make sure that they're all about the same size. And these are going to be represented as our columns for our bridge. We have our cardboard piece, which is going to be like the roadway, or you will hear me call it a deck. We're also going to be using rubber bands again. Those are going to represent the tension from the cable. So remember, whenever a cable is pulled, it gets stronger. We have some string that's going to also represent the suspension that it gets pulled through some of these cable lines. We have our hole puncher to hole punch in the sides to make sure that these anchors go in. That was the word I was looking for. So the anchors are going to hold down the cable piece, which is the string. We also have a pair of scissors to cut the cardboard pieces. And last but not least, we have a hot glue gun. Please make sure that you feel safe using your hot glue gun or have an adult help you out. All right, so let's get started. So you want to make a spot for each of these columns. What you want to do to have a suspension bridge is you want your paper towel roll to be a little bit taller than your actual bridge. You want the top of your column to have space for holding onto the cables. So what we're going to do is we're just going to cut off the edges. Remember, these are cylinders. So cylinder is more of a circle shape. So I'm going to cut sort of a circle shape out just on the side, my cardboard pieces, and you're going to do that on all 4 corners. If you want to draw them, if you want to measure them, if you want to be a perfectionist, go for it. But we have all 4 corners cut off, and what we're going to do now is we're going to glue our cardboard tubes to our piece of cardboard. Alright, so in order to do that, I normally like to go along the edge here, push down to get some glue out. You can spread the glue around, but I like to put the glue on the edge of that. So whenever this gets held up against it, you can see where the glue is actually sitting. So if this accidentally falls, if something happens, then you know where to put this. So what I like to do is I just like to hold this for a few seconds here. Say about 30 seconds. And then once you feel like the glue, you can kind of start seeing it stick or pool maybe in the spots that aren't sticking. You can grab the column that you're gonna put diagonally. Just be careful because you don't want that column to go awry. So you're gonna grab the opposite column and do whatever is diagonal from it. So I'm gonna do this one. Same thing, putting my hot glue down on my piece of cardboard, moving my hot glue gun so I don't get burnt. And then what I like to do with this, because now we have 2 different sides, is I like to push. You can see my deck is a little bit floppy right now because we don't have our 2 diagonal sides. So we want that roadway to be nice and stable so it can hold vehicles, people, bikes. All right. So just making sure that that glue sticks and stays in the spot that it should be. You're going to do the last 2 sides, same process. So you have your glue, and my glue is kind of starting to drip. So I'm gonna grab it with my cardboard tube. And something that I like about some like thinner cardboard tubes is that you can kind of morph the shape of the cardboard tube to the shape that you kind of cut out your corner with. All right, so left side. You can also do this with toilet paper rolls. It would just be a smaller bridge. So maybe you wouldn't have as much room. Okay, so I'm gonna push that. This side and this side go together. If you want to have a, friend push on this side while you push on this side, just to make sure that it's nice and stable. All right. So my glue is starting to dry. While that is drying, I just want to kind of make sure that it's still and in the areas. If you feel like your glue isn't holding, feel free to put more glue on. Put it in some spots that maybe you missed. But keep it on top. So if you would try to put glue down below, something that might happen is it might drip. And if hot glue drips, sometimes you accidentally can burn yourself. Okay, so just be careful with the hot glue. Nice and careful. Uh-oh, one of my columns is falling over. Okay, so again, just letting that glue dry, making sure my columns are all in the right spot. You can push down from the top with your hands. You can kind of like push down to just make sure that those are level. And then let that glue just dry. Let it take a moment to dry. While the glue is drying, I'm going to show you how to put some holes in here. So there's a couple techniques that you can use. If you have a hole puncher, obviously you can use a hole puncher. Punching through 1, 2, maybe 3. You could do as many as you want. The least that I would do is 3. And I say that because there will the more suspension that you have, or this more cables that you have for the suspension cords, that will go through and it's gonna pull. So the more tension it's caused, the stronger this will be. So the more holes you kind of put in it, the stronger it will be. So I'm only putting a couple, but it should work out pretty well. All right. Oh yeah, and what I'm doing right now is just punching in some holes for our columns. So we have holes that come through right here for the string to go through. So on all 4 of the columns, I just put the hole punch straight through, you can see. Okay. So we have 3 holes over here for the anchorages or the rubber bands. I'm just going to duplicate that on the other side. So if you want to get really technical, or if you want to make sure that this just measures up correctly, you can use a ruler to come across. I'm just going to kind of eyeball it, make sure right around the same sides. Another helpful tip is just make sure that your hole punch is not hanging off of the side. Make sure that you put your hole puncher in as far as possible. Now, if you don't have a hole puncher, you can always use a pencil. So let me just grab, sorry about that. Let me just grab my pencil. So if you don't have a hole punch, like I said, you can use a pencil. What you're gonna do is you're going to push. Make sure that your fingers aren't below where you're gonna push, or else you're gonna poke yourself. So you're gonna push, twist, and then keep pushing down. Be careful with your bridge. If the glue isn't dry yet, it might break, but you're gonna push, twist, and then poke a hole through. All right, last couple of steps. I like to put my rubber bands up top here, and I'm going to thread them through. So when I say I'm going to thread my rubber bands through, you can think about it like sewing. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna kind of twist up my rubber band. Imagine this being like your piece of string that you're gonna put into your needle or put into your fabric. You're going to twist it and then see how it comes through, and make sure that your hand is on the other side here. Pull, and then create 2 loops. The one loop is going to come inside. Whoops, I lost it. The one loop is going to come inside the other loop, and then you're going to pull. So you can notice that these rubber bands that I'm using are a little bit smaller. If you guys have ever used rainbow looms, those are really great to use for this project. The rubber bands that are smaller, I used to have braces, and I had to put rubber bands in my mouth for braces. Those rubber bands work really well. So the smaller it seems like the rubber bands, the more tension that it pulls. So I'm gonna do the same thing on this side. I think I'm gonna stick to my red theme. I have some red. So again, just twisting, pushing through, loop, inside the other loop. And you can see that that creates an anchorage that's pretty tight, and you can create that loop that is, we're gonna string our cable through, right? Our suspension cable. Second loop. Cool. Oh. How does on this stay? So you don't want to stay, just pull. Try to be gentle, but pull as tight as possible. Some of my cardboard's kind of picking up on that one. So looks like it's falling, but what I'm gonna do here is hurry up and finish that. Pull it up, and I'm just gonna make sure my string goes through there before it falls off. With string, what I like to do is have the first piece be about as long as my arms, so my wingspan. So I pull it across, I pull my arms as far as I can, and I know that that's probably enough string. It might be a little bit more. First thing I'm gonna do is I'm actually going to thread it through the column up top here. So placing my yarn or string or whatever you have inside, pulling pulling that through. And then coming down and placing the string through the rubber bands. So you can see I'm kind of like threading this through a little bit at a time. Make sure while you're threading it, same thing as sewing, that you're not pulling your end piece. Oops, sorry. And then last one, and then we'll go up on the column here. See how that string is starting to pull? It's creating the tension. That is gonna help our bridge stand very strong. Okay, so just pulling that. You might have to play around with your rubber bands a little bit here too. There we go. Nice. So you see if you pull too much, whoa, it's way too much tension. My hole puncher was underneath it. Okay, so same thing on the other side. I am going to grab a piece of string, make it as long as my arm again. Placing it through the column. Try to do this side pretty quickly. Pulling through, but not all the way, right? Make sure you still have your suspensions coming off the edge of your column. This piece might be a little too short. I'll try it. Okay, going through all of our anchors with our rubber bands. And then very last thing to string. Okay, so that side and that side. So what you have now is you have your bridge. You can start to decorate, maybe put like, what if you had water underneath? There used to be bridges for cattle or cows to go under, and then the cars can be on top, so the vehicles and the cows could be safe. So think about how you want to decorate your bridge. The final step that you want to do is pull on your suspension cables here. You're going to pull those through, and then you can hold it down with your fingers, or you can also place a piece of tape. Now, remember what I said about pulling the yarn. You want to make sure you're not pulling it so much that the columns are moving. So play around with your yarn, play around with your rubber bands, hold that together, and just kind of see how things work. So you can just kind of take a little look.
So let's talk about the engineering that goes on behind bridges. A suspension bridge is a bridge in which the deck, the part that you drive across, is hung below suspension cables. Typically, suspension bridges are built with two tall towers and a cable that travels from one shore through the two towers and to the other shore. Vertical suspender cables hang from the main horizontal cable and hold the weight of the deck. How can one cable hold the weight of the deck? Because it is supported carefully by balanced forces from the two towers. The force pulling inwards on the towers is equal to the force pulling outwards on the towers towards the land. Because the forces are balanced, the weight pulls straight down into the towers and onto the ground. Each cable is made up of thousands of individual steel wires that are bound together. Steel's tensile strength improves as it is stretched into wires. So these flexible cables are stronger than a solid piece of steel of the same size. Now that we've looked at bridges from around the world, let's look at some a little closer to home. Pittsburgh is known as the city of bridges because it has 446 bridges that allow communities to connect. And if you go downtown to North Side, you'll see a series of 3 identical yellow bridges. The 6th Street, 7th Street, and 9th Street Bridge are better known as the Roberto Clemente Bridge, the Andy Warhol Bridge, and the Rachel Carson Bridge. The bridges were named after famous Pittsburghers. The Roberto Clemente Bridge leads to the baseball field, PNC Park, where a large statue of him stands proudly. The Andy Warhol Bridge is the only bridge named after a visual artist, and it leads to the infamous Warhol Museum. The Rachel Carson Bridge was named after the renowned environmentalist who grew up in a farmhouse not far from here in Springdale, about 18 miles down the highway. As Rachel grew up, she studied marine biology and became an author. One of her best-selling books is Silent Spring. This writing was credited with advancing global environmental movements. She was among the first to help save the earth by reversing national pesticide policies